All right. Hello, everyone. It is great to see all of you on a very exciting day for our campaign here in Wisconsin for the United States Senate. We've got the man, the myth, the legend, Andrew Yang with us today. Andrew, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I've got this Twitter space open simultaneously too, so I don't know if that's necessary or if by talking to the Zoom is going to do it. Look at this. It sounds like it's happening all as one. There's a bit of stereo, but it's great to see you, Stephen. You look none the worse for wear for a candidate.
You hear me okay?
Yeah. You look good. You look and sound great to me.
Good. Excellent. Well, I want to thank everyone who's tuning in and who made time to join us today on short notice. Like I said, today is a very exciting day, and we're excited to make an announcement about our campaign. Just to give everyone a quick heads up on where we're at. We've been running this campaign for over a year now. Our primary election is on August 9th, and we're building momentum very quickly. We just had a great Democratic Party convention last weekend, and we're running on the reform platform, believing that you have to address structural reform if you're going to get real change in our politics. And I know that's something that Andrew has spoken a lot about. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Andrew because I know he's got some exciting news to share.
I'm thrilled to share that I am endorsing Stephen Olikara for U.S. Senate out of the great state of Wisconsin. Yay! And not only me, but the Forward Party too, because Stephen is the lone candidate who is for nonpartisan open primaries, ranked choice voting, and genuinely opening up the system so that the people have the representation they deserve, the accountability, genuine incentives, and the things I love about Stephen. Please don't take this as self-flattery, but he reminds me of me, and I say self-flattery because he's clearly younger and better looking than I am. But before throwing his hat in the political ring, Stephen started this awesome organization, the Millennium Action Project, which is something that I'm somewhat familiar with and that I started and ran a nonprofit for a number of years. And I'm a huge believer that people who start those kind of pro-social organizations would make phenomenal public servants and leaders because they've been building something wholesome and positive for a period of time. They've been running organizations, and it's actually, in my mind, something of a natural bridge to public service. Also, son of immigrants, can carry a tune. I actually am not that musical. So Stephen, again, I'm like projecting all my wishes for myself onto you. But Stephen is a next generation leader. He's someone who understands what people are actually going through every day in Wisconsin. There are some other candidates in the field who, frankly, I do not think understand. So I'm super pumped to be teaming up with Stephen and his team to have an awesome impact in Wisconsin and hopefully nationwide.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, Andrew, we're super honored and grateful. And I can tell you, just as I go around Wisconsin, I get a few repeat questions. One question is, what's your plan for climate change and healthcare? Or another one is, how are you going to heal America? And another one is, what do you think of Andrew Yang? This question comes up about every 2 days, and we've maintained this streak for a long time. And the interesting thing is that question comes from people who are not only progressives and Democrats, but also independents. You've got libertarians, conservatives, centrists. I mean, really, it's the motley crew of people who support the Yang Gang and the Forward movement. And one of the recent times someone asked me that, I kind of flipped the question on him. I said, well, what do you think of Andrew Yang? And he says, what do I think? And he proceeds to move out of his truck and shows me a Yang-like themed truck that he's got with Yang and Forward decals on it. And he offered that truck for us to use anytime we're up in Wausau, Wisconsin. So a long way of saying we're very grateful for your support, and I'm excited to build a movement here in Wisconsin with you.
Well, I'm thrilled but not surprised the Yang Gang in Wisconsin's been getting behind you. You are a reformer, an outsider, an entrepreneur. And I feel like you and I have the same type of vibe or energy. Again, a bit of self-congratulation. But the folks of the Yang Gang in Wisconsin were some of the best anywhere. I think I didn't meet the person who owned the truck you have in question, but I do know him online. And it's awesome that you're continuing to carry the banner for some of these reform measures that often I think the closer you are to the inside of the Democratic Party, the harder it is for you to embrace these reforms. And the fact that people are getting behind you from every political angle or alignment also makes sense to me. So one of the things that I joke about is that when I showed up in Iowa and New Hampshire, there are a lot of people that sensed that I was definitely not of the establishment. And there are a lot of Americans that are attracted to that, who are conservative or libertarians, who are far left. And so I think that you're going to carry a lot of unexpected support.
Oh, thank you. And coincidentally, the gentleman who has that Yang truck, I think, just joined this Zoom. By the way, our team is saying we're getting some feedback from the Twitter. So maybe if you can, I think you need to unmute yourself maybe on the Twitter space and then lower your volume. I think that might work out.
It probably is me. I can sense I have something going on over here.
Oh, perfect. Oh, good. And to everyone who's online on our Zoom, we are taking questions. We'll probably only have time for a couple questions, but would love to hear what's on your mind. Now, all right, seeing a few people come in. So one thing I just want to highlight in terms of what we're building here right now, we do have a important need to get more visibility and a larger platform for our campaign. And that's one reason why this endorsement is so helpful for us. There also is a debate coming up in a few weeks. The local media organizations so far have refrained from holding any debates. And, I think a lot of America got to know you, Andrew, through the presidential debates. And so you know how important that is. So we've been advocating for them, and finally they got one debate scheduled, and there is a donor threshold. So as we're having this conversation, I just want people to think about one of the ways that you can be really helpful, which is donating $1 to our campaign, because we need to get to 5,000 donors in order to have that platform on the debate stage. But just looking at some of the questions coming in, for Andrew, do you have any plans to come campaign in Wisconsin with Stephen? I like this question.
Oh yeah, I would enjoy the heck out of that. One of my great regrets was that I didn't make it to Wisconsin. I expected to get there for what was going to be the DNC convention, which got turned into a virtual convention because of COVID. So I'd love to get out there. I have a lot of friends there. And I do want to draw everyone's attention to a donation link that I think is in the chat here in the Zoom. And if you are on Twitter, they'll put it in the links as well. But you can donate, Kate, $1, $2, $5. The threshold is that Stephen here needs to get 5,000 individual donors by the end of June. So if you look at the calendar, oh my gosh, that gives us what, 3 days? But I'm happy to say that Stephen's well on his way, and that if you make a donation of $2, you could help get him over the top. I would say don't even stop there. Like, ask a few friends and say, look, show them a picture of Stephen's handsome face and say, wouldn't you love to get this guy on the US Senate debate stage in Wisconsin, and just for $2? And this reminds, I'm sure, many of you of my presidential, because in our case, we needed 65,000 donors to make that first presidential debate. So we ran out and we're like, hey, everyone, donate $2, $5. And so I have to say, again, the parallels are almost eerie. But in Stephen's case, he may announce where he is on the path to 5,000, but we need the people here today. If you like what you're seeing and hearing from Stephen, just go to his website and donate exactly $2.49. No, I'm kidding. You can donate any amount. donate $5, and then you can be part of the story, getting Stephen on the national or on the sorry, it's like that. It's like the Senate debate stage in Wisconsin, and just having Stephen on that debate stage saying the words ranked choice voting or open primaries, I think it would be worth the $2 or $5 that we're going to give. So let's put him over the top, and then we'll be able to take credit for him being on the debate stage, making the case.
Absolutely. I mean, there are very few opportunities, I think, for independent-minded candidates to get this kind of platform. And yes, it is a Wisconsin Senate race, but first of all, Chuck Todd will be the co-moderator, so there is going to be a bit of a national platform. And for the political junkies who are here, you all know how nationalized this race is. It's the Ron Johnson race. It's seen as the #1 or certainly top 2 race in the country. So the nation's eyes are going to be on us leading up to August 9th. So it really is a rare opportunity to have a national platform for someone who believes in structurally reforming our politics, who believes in reforms like open primaries and ranked choice voting, who believes that we need to end this practice of career politicians and put in place term limits, who believes that we should expand how we look at economic success. It's not just GDP, it should be about dignity and fulfillment. And so these are things that you don't hear from traditional Democrats. And I actually also believe that for anyone who wants to replace Ron Johnson this year, obviously that can't be the only message. We need more than that. But even if you just want to replace Ron Johnson, this is the coalition, the exhausted majority, plus firing up the Democratic base. That's what you need to actually win this kind of election. So
you would destroy Ron Johnson. You know what I mean? It'd be such a great contrast. I'm going to give you a high compliment that I think everyone will still take this as a high compliment. You've got that Obama-esque energy. Wow. If you had Stephen versus Ron Johnson, that contrast, I feel like it would just completely create a wave in Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's going to be a tight race. I think that if you had someone who is a genuine reformer, it would be much, much more effective than if you had someone who kind of represented the traditional Democratic Party.
That's right. That's right. And Wisconsin has a history of this too. The last time we actually had an open competitive Democratic primary was 1992. And that was the year that Russ Feingold emerged out of nowhere as an underdog to ultimately win that primary and win that general election. And many of you may know what he was running on. He was running on clean government. He ultimately did work across the aisle on campaign finance reform. So there is precedent for this, and we look forward to building on that. Any interesting, question. Someone was asking if I'm on the ballot. So this is a great thing because we showed the strength of our grassroots network blowing past the 2,000 signature requirement to get on that ballot. We submitted over 3,200 signatures. We had about 100 signature gatherers working for us across the state. I feel pretty confident we have actually the best grassroots network in this campaign. We see it at grassroots events. We see it when we have multi-candidate events. But here's the thing. There still have been basically zero multi-candidate events at the grassroots level that the media has attended. We finally had a candidate forum last week, which was the first one that the media attended. So that's why this debate is so important. It's really to close that gap between the energy we see on the ground. I'm sure you saw this too with your campaign, Andrew, and then finally getting that reflected at the media level. And we've got some big self-funders in this race. So our ability to just show our energy through earned media and through social media are really the tools we have available to us. But I'm sure you can relate to some of that, Andrew.
Yeah, wow. Again, the parallels are yearly. I was next to some self-funders too. So for those of you who don't know politics, self-funder equals very, very rich guys or gals. You know, there have been female self-funders, though I suspect the male to female self-funder ratio is something like 10 to 1. But really, really rich people who are like, you know what, I'm going to do this thing. And then they throw millions of dollars at it. And no, like I'm not someone who thinks that necessarily makes you a bad person. But I will say that that's not necessarily like the Democratic ideal. I think it's superior if someone like Stephen gets thousands and then tens of thousands and then hundreds of thousands of people behind him. I mean, that's closer to the ideal. And I think he has the right stuff. We just need to help him get the message out.
I think I just invited you as a speaker on our Twitter Spaces, Andrew. I think that's what was causing that.
Oh yeah, good. My mic is off, so now it should be all right.
Okay.
No, it's not. It's something else. Whatever.
All right. Anyway, excellent. Well, we are so grateful for everyone tuning in here. And there is a forward chapter here in Wisconsin. I know the head of that chapter is making a few comments in the chat. And again, we also just need your help amplifying our message. We've got a tweet that's ready to go on Twitter that you can help retweet. We'll be cross-posting this across different platforms. Definitely elevate this. Within Yang Gang itself, today we could get on that debate stage. So I think we should make that happen. And yes, we absolutely got some great yard signs. We'll be getting those out to people. Andrew, just as we have our last few minutes here, any advice you have as someone who sought to really break through against a lot of the odds with a fresh message, up against a lot of establishment forces, a lot of big money forces? What do you think was the key, I guess, other than having, I know you had some podcasts that definitely helped along the way, but generally, what advice would you have for us to really have some of those big breakthrough moments?
Well, I will suggest to you that you're going to make this debate, thanks to some of the people who are here online today. So thank you to everyone who's donating $1, $5, and spreading the word. And then you're going to get on that debate stage. It's going to be you and the self-funder and the establishment candidate, and maybe one other person. And the people there are going to treat you like you're not supposed to be there.
Right.
And there's going to be this kind of resistance that you have to push through. And I will say to you all, and for the people who are here today, I know that this might not be a revelation, but it took me one debate to figure that out, and to become more comfortable and overcome it. And I think in your case, you might not have that one debate grace, because in my case, I made the first debate stage, but I made 2 debates in the first one and then 2 debates. So like I had 2 debates minimum, and I thought plausibly 4. Whereas in your case, you're probably going to have to go a bit above and beyond and outside the box in that first debate. It's something that you kind of wish that you had one to get used to it, but in your case, you might not. So that's going to be something I'd try and push you on, is to do something differently than I did.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Well, we will absolutely get there. Thanks to Yang Gang support and to all of you who are tuning in online. Andrew, any final words you have as we wrap up?
Let's take some questions from some people. But no, I sense that you're doing all the right things by showing up in people's towns and communities, and giving people a sense as to who you are and why you're running. And that kind of grassroots support really is worth its weight in gold, particularly in a campaign like the one you're running.
Yeah. We've got Brandon saying, if you want to make a splash, offer the audience $1,000 a month. And then we got another question. With all that's happened with the Supreme Court, what can you do to provide some hope? I think you and I, not surprisingly, Andrew, we've been talking about the same thing here, which is, again, we got to get at the root issue here. We need Supreme Court reform, including things like term limits. But Andrew, what would you say to people who are looking for some hope in the face of the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I want to follow the will of the people on this, which is that most Americans are for term limits for Supreme Court justices. Interestingly enough, they're for age limits. And I think that you, Stephen, might be very able to make a generational case. A lot of Americans are waking up to the fact that our leaders are really, really old, and there are some problems attendant to that. 74 to 80% of Americans are for congressional term limits. Similar proportion, a bit lower, but still very, very high, are for judicial term limits. There needs to be a genuine rethink of the Supreme Court. And interestingly, a majority of Americans are for a balanced appointment system where you have Democrats, Republicans, and independents represented on the court. Like we have to recognize that this has become a political institution and then treat it accordingly. Instead of having these superannuated nine figures in robes who are there adjudicating until like essentially death comes and like places their hand on their shoulders and say, you know, we're taking away. I mean, it's really crazy what we built. By the way, you know what's not in the Constitution? The number of justices. It's been lower than 9. It's been higher than 9. And the fact that we've now fixed on 9, it is just totally arbitrary. Like that. There's all of this strange hidebound tradition coming out of DC where everyone just kind of walks around on tiptoes and no one makes sense of it. Everyone's like, oh, like, you know, here they are in their robes and their giant building. It's like, you know what, like this is not making sense to a majority of Americans. You know, we need to modernize it. So I'd start with term limits. I think 18 years is reasonable. And then if you did stick with 9, then you'd have one justice rotating off every 2 years. Every president would get 2 appointments. And then you wouldn't have these crazy whipsaws based upon people keeling over and dying.
That's right. Yeah, it makes no sense to me that the lives of millions of people often hinge on the personal health of one justice. And I think that doesn't make a lot of sense.
There are a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense on that level, Stephen, right now. I mean, like we should look up. We all know that our president is 80 years old this year. Donald Trump will be 77 in 2024. Nancy Pelosi's 81, though she looks great. You know, I've been around her. I've been like, holy shit, you're 80. Chuck Schumer is a relatively spry 70 or 71. Steny Hoyer is 80. I mean, you're really looking at like a very strange government that is determined in large part by the health of septuagenarians and octogenarians.
Exactly. Another question was, Andrew, both you and Stephen are natural bridge builders who look at solving problems as more important than partisanship. Can you describe the kind of senator you think Stephen will be?
I think Stephen would be someone who defies classic party categorization. He would work with folks of any party to get things done. I think he would help keep the people of Wisconsin together and on the same page and positive. You know, he'd fight for the things he believes in, but he would take advantage of his nature as a bridge builder to try and make things happen. And you know, one of the things I'm going to suggest, just to be brutally honest, I think that there's going to be a period during which you're going to need Republican support to get certain things done. And there are some legislators who are content to win races and not get things done. And I feel like Stephen's the opposite.
Thank you. Well, thanks for that question. Thanks for that response. Can you please discuss Final 5 voting? Maybe this is a good last question to take from the audience. Final 5 voting. Andrew, I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, so this is one of the only ways out of our current mess. Which is instead of having 2 parties having closed party primaries and then having candidates who run against each other, which by the way leads to some really messed up stuff, like Democrats spending millions of dollars to elevate conspiracy theorists and Trumpists because they're going to be quote unquote easier to beat in the general. And we all know that that's playing with fire, where they thought that about Trump back in 2016. It's like, oh, good, this guy, and then he wins. You know, they've done this with half a dozen candidates around the country, including, for example, the gubernatorial candidate in Pennsylvania. Like they're like, ooh, we spend $1 million, you know, elevating the crazy person. And then lo and behold, you have a crazy person who's a Republican candidate. It's like, you know, like, unfortunately, the crazy person like wins sometimes. So we have to do away with these perverse party primaries that end up empowering the extremes of our society and instead replace it with nonpartisan open primaries where everyone can vote for anyone of any candidate. You can have independents run, you can have forward party run, and then you settle it via ranked choice voting so that the winners tend to be more centrist, more moderate, more consensus building, and less prone to just, you know, generating energy on one extreme or the other. So this is the answer to the prayers of many Americans. And it drives me nuts that for all of the ink that's been spilled bemoaning our situation, then they just don't talk about the obvious solution that's right there in front of us. Alaska already did it. It's going to be on the ballot in Nevada. It could be on the ballot in Missouri. So we have to run around the country unlocking our legislators from these messed up incentives, because if you make someone's job dependent upon them being crazy, they'll get crazy on you. If you make their job security dependent upon them serving 51% of us, then they'll do that.
Yeah. And you get a few. I've met a lot of members of Congress, worked with a lot of them. You meet a few who can cut against the grain and defy a lot of these odds and these incentives, but that's a very small number of people. The vast majority of them are going to go, based on the incentives. And we're building the Final Five voting movement here in Wisconsin, bipartisan or post-partisan support. And I just think that, oh yeah, we're going to jump in there. Well, I'll just, so with the Final Five movement here in Wisconsin, I recently asked a group of people at one of our events recently, how many people here have heard of ranked choice voting? Over 70% of the audience rose their hand. And I asked this question from time to time just to gauge, are people picking up on this issue? And they are. So that's definitely very exciting. I'll share one final reflection, and then Andrew, I'll give you the final word here. So one of my favorite days of the campaign trail started in Madison, Wisconsin, progressive blue bubble. And it was a group of people who come out of the Fighting Bob LaFollette progressive era style politics. And we absolutely lit it up in this room talking about, pro-democracy reforms, being pro-worker. And it was a fantastic event for people here in Wisconsin who are familiar with our former Lieutenant Governor, Barbara Lawton. She's endorsed our campaign, and it's very much part of that orbit of our progressive leaders in Wisconsin. Then we went north to Neillsville, Wisconsin, a small town, ruby red area, and voted for Trump, did a veterans event, about 60, 70 people there. And we quickly realized none of them are Democrats. And we talked about the message of rebuilding trust in government, how through Millennial Action Project, we've actually passed concrete bills to support veterans employment. And we realized after this event that, we cut through just as much in Neillsville as we did in Madison. And I asked one of the women afterwards, what happened here? And she says, we're so used to not trusting our politicians, and you are speaking from the heart. And I feel like we can actually trust you. And that goes beyond political party. So that's the kind of coalition we're building here in Wisconsin. We've already made history, elevating the first South Asian to a US Senate ballot here in Wisconsin. And we're going to make history again on August 9th and one more time in November. So with that, Andrew, I'll give you the final word.
It's such a privilege to be able to get the Yang Gang out behind Stephen and get him on that debate stage. So after spending the last 30 to 40 minutes with Stephen, hopefully you see what I see, which is someone who would be a phenomenal US Senator, would inspire millions of people, not just in Wisconsin, but around the country. And we can help make that happen just by donating $3 right now. You like how I keep changing the number? It doesn't matter. Donate $4 right now. Add Stephen's website, tell a few friends, be like, hey, check out this handsome guy. We can make him a US Senator, or at least get him on this debate stage so he can make a case for genuine reform, for ranked choice voting. It's such a steal of a deal. You know what I mean? And I will say too, if you donate this $5, not only would you get Stephen on the debate stage, but you also feel like you did a service for the country. You were a good person. You helped fuel the next generation of political leadership in this country, which Stephen 100% represents. So thrilled to be here with you all and to help move this country forward, starting with Wisconsin.
All right. Thank you very much. The state's motto here in Wisconsin is forward.
No.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Yes, it is. It is. So this is the perfect place for the revolution to happen. And speaking of that, the one place you can donate, StephenOlikara.com/revolution or StephenOlikara.com/debate. We really appreciate your help. I'm seeing some folks in the chat who are among those people, Andrew, who said, hey, at one of our events, hey, Stephen, what do you think of Andrew Yang, or what do you think of the Yang Gang? And you know, after hearing of that like 10 times, I was so glad that we were able to meet, and so glad we were able to team up on this. So thank you so much.
Keep going, keep building, Stephen. We'll see you on that debate stage. So pumped for you, Wisconsin, and the country. Let's get you the Senate.
Let's do it. All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Andrew. We are so appreciative, and we're going to win this thing. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.